What up, y'all? I'm back. Um, I'm we're finally here. I've been kind of waiting to do this for a while, and I've been kind of figuring out like how I'm gonna do this. But I've decided I am gonna, like I mentioned, we're gonna be kicking off Tarantino, who, in my opinion, is I would put him top five. He's like fourth or fifth. He's such a phenomenal director. I've been wanting to talk about his movies for a while. But so I decided what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna review them once a week. So, because I don't want to go through them really quick. I normally with a lot of franchises I review them after each other. But with Tarantino, I'm gonna kind of keep them like a week apart. I want to drag this out because Tarantino's a lot. I don't. I would say almost all his movies, to be honest with you, are are masterpieces. They're so good. I don't want to just kind of get through them so quick. So I'm gonna take my time with them. So we're kicking off with Pulp Fiction, not Pulp Fiction. That'll be next week. Reservoir Dogs, which rewatching, I is such a good movie. And the crazy thing is, it's such a small set. Like you're mainly in the warehouse, besides like the beginning, and then the scenes that are outside of it are either the flashbacks or the couple of scenes you're in front of the warehouse. But yeah, like a lot of it is in that. Like that's what's crazy. It's like one set piece. We have so many great actors: Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, who I think forgot what movie it was. Like a movie in Britain, which I watched a couple of months ago, which isn't horrible. It was like him as a kid, and he's like it's like a skinheady type of movie, but it's not. I can't think of the name right now, but Steve Buscemi's in it, who he's a great character actor. Even in the not I thought not so great sequel, which was okay but not as good. Escape from L.A. He's just in general. Steve Buscemi is just a great character actor. He's all like same with Walton Goggins. Just in general, he's like an actor like that who just plays a lot of like character types. So and then you had Michael Madsen, who's another good one. Like a lot of heavy hitters in this. And the thing with this movie is crazy. There's no side characters really. Like it's mainly these guys, and then like Joe, who's like the main boss, and that's the crazy part. So the story is a pretty much a job goes bad, and these criminals have to go back to their warehouse, and they got to figure out who the rat is, and basically that's the story. You go through different, and I love the moments where they through each individual. Not each. I don't think they really did one for Mr. Blue, who I think um, I'll admit they don't really go into him as much, but they're like the scenes with like a couple of key characters where they go into how they were hired. So this is where you get a few scenes outside of the warehouse, and I think they did a really good job with it. The film it flows perfectly, and what I'm surprised it's only an hour and a half. I thought this film would be longer, but no, it's only an hour and a half. And like I said, the thing with this movie is the dialogue, and that's what in general you're gonna hear me say this a lot in these reviews with Tarantino films is the dialogue. He's such a master at dialogue. And the crazy thing is, this movie there's not a lot of shootouts, so there's really not a lot of action. Really, there's like the scene in the end with the police. Then there's one scene with Buscemi getting chased where you go into kind of his backstory a little bit, you know. So there's a little bit, but mostly, dude, this movie is just dialogue, and I think that's what makes it so good, you know. Like Tarantino's so good at it, and that's why I really like this movie. It's just heavy hitters, not a lot. Crazy, there's not a lot of side characters either. Like it's a lot, mainly about these guys. So, but here we go. Definitely a phenomenal one. Definitely one I'd recommend. Yeah, I'll say this: there's a lot of racial slurs. Not a lot, obviously, not as much as like let's say like Django, but like there's a couple times they drop the N bomb, but it is what it is, you know. But here we go. Another thing with Tarantino, he's such really master. I almost say a master at this, dude. The soundtracks, man. He always has this like '70s touch to his movies, which I really like. No matter the decade, his movies feel um they have like this '70s ish, like like kind of how like the '70s did certain movies. So so this movie opens up. This is where we meet our characters who um they're eating at this diner, and and we get like this funny scene of just the dialogue for 7.5 minutes. Just Tripp's dialogue with all these characters. You get Steve Buscemi talking about why he doesn't tip, and Harvey Keitel, who you might recognize. He's another Pulp Fiction actor. He was the wolf in that movie. I thought he does a really good job in this scene too. Like just all around, everyone talking about their dialogue. Like they argue just about a few things. They even argue about fucking Madonna. So the fact that Tarantino can make that interesting is insane. So we get like, and it's just 7.5 minutes, and this is the beginning of the movie. And I got another thing I gotta mention. Like the fucking cinematography in certain shots, man, are done beautifully. Like it's probably one of his best shot films, even though there's not a lot of amazing like it's not cinematography. Let's say like I guess if you're gonna compare it to something like like Blade Runner or something, but it's still like just like the certain shots you get, like the way the camera is moving around is beautifully. So after this scene, this is where we get the title and the credit scenes, and then we kind of now jump a bit. So this is where they're supposed to do this big heist. We see Mr. White is fleeing with Mr. Orange, who was shot, who we obviously see later how it all ends up going down. And then they're driving in a car, and this is where he's bleeding severely, close to dying. He ends up revealing his name, which is, I think, Larry. And they go to their hideout, and he has to. Tim Roth does a really good job in this scene, portraying being shot, like the way he's talking. Because, of course, when you get shot, you're probably not breathing right, so you can't just talk normal. So he does a really good job of portraying it. And like I said, the beginning of this movie is mainly these two, and then Steve Buscemi comes in. He's Mr. Pink. Um, um, White and assures that Mr. White assures Mr. Orange that he isn't gonna die. Um, Mr. Pink arrives, and they discuss what kind of happened, and they discuss Mr. Blonde, which is Michael Madsen's character, went crazy and shot up the people, and then the cops just showed up. So this is where they start to kind of realize, oh, we might have been set up. And then I think there's a quick scene where we see Mr. White's character. So you see like the text Mr. White or Mr. Orange, where they go into how they were hired. And I think the way Tarantino shoots it is done in a way where it's not confusing. Same with Pulp Fiction, even though I've heard people try to say it's confusing, I don't think so. He does it in a way where it's smooth. It transitions into like the flashbacks, because he's not doing like this thing where he makes the camera look, oh, we're definitely about to go into a flashback. He actually just naturally does it. So we see a bit of Mr. White being hired by Joe, who's like the boss, tells him about the heist, and then now we're back to the warehouse, and it's done so smoothly. So you're not like, okay, where are we? Okay, we still know where we are. So they're Mr. White and Mr. Pink starting to argue now, because Mr. Pink wants to get the fuck out, and they can't take Mr. Orange to the hospital because this is where it's revealed the reason they have aliases is because they don't want to know their names, because they don't want to obviously risk being caught. So they start we get a funny argument between the two, and this is where Mr. Blonde comes in, and then we get another argument, And Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen plays this character so well because Mr. Blonde is arguably, even though they're all criminals, he's the worst of them. Like, obviously, learn he killed a couple of people, which was just supposed to be a routine heist. And Mr. White and Mr. Blonde are about to argue. This is where Nice Guy Eddie, which is played by uh, Chris Penn. Um, so and then we kind of get a before that we get like a kind of like a flashback where this is where we see Mr. Blonde, who's I think his real name is Vic, get hired, and it's such a good scene. Like the smooth transitions and the cinematics are just done so well in this movie. So after we get that flashback, we get Miss Nice Guy Eddie finally arrives. Before that, it turns out that Mr. Blonde has a cop in his trunk, so they bring him in, they beat him up a bit, and then Mr. Eddie, I think finally, Nice Guy Eddie, not Mr. Eddie. Um, um, so Nice Guy Eddie, I think finally arrives here, or I think there's something before that. So they beat the cop for for information, and then Nice Guy Eddie arrives and basically orders them to get the. Mr. Pink earlier mentions he hid the diamonds, and that scene alone, like, so yeah, there's like a scene of him running and kind of running into people, running from cops. So that's like the one kind of shootout you get where he kind of shoots at cops for a bit before he gets away. Like that's the thing about this movie. Tarantino doesn't always like not all his movies are action packed. Even Pulp isn't really. Like there's shooting scenes, but like his earlier ones, I'd argue, aren't super action packed like that. Like, it really isn't until like Kill Bill I really feel like he goes more action heavy. And that's the crazy thing. I know he did From Dusk to Dawn, but like of his main line films. So so Eddie arrives and he are gonna move the cars because his dad's mad. His dad's Joe is mad about how the heist went. So they go, and while this is happening, Mr. Blonde starts torturing the cop, and they play like this '70s music. I think, and the crazy thing is, Michael Madsen does such a good job of portraying this creep because he looks like a normal dude, and he's calm, and he's like fucking just dancing and singing while he's about to cut this dude. He cuts his fucking ear off, man. It's crazy. You don't fully see it, but you see a little bit of it. And you just can realize this dude's just fucking crazy. So, um, he's about to, and then there's a scene he goes outside to get get oil, and then like the scene is done well because when he walks back in, there's like the camera's like right behind him. You see like this point of view shot. Like it's done so smooth. Like that's what I mean. Like the cinematography in this film is done so well, and the camera work, and I just gotta mention that. Like, and the crazy thing is like, it's only a lot of this movie is in this warehouse. Like minus like some of the scenes, like the flashback scenes. Um, you just have a lot of like, you're just in this room and there's no side characters aside from this one cop who hasn't like he hasn't even really talked. He got tied up, he got beat up. It's like so he hasn't even really had any dialogue yet. It's crazy. So um Mr. Blonde pours some sorry about that. He pours some old gasoline, not oil, sorry, gasoline on the cop, and he's about to like set him on fire. Then this is where Mr. Orange comes back into the movie because he was kind of passed out, and he shoots Mr. Blonde, and this is where it's revealed that he's the undercover cop. And I'll admit I fully didn't remember because I hadn't watched this movie Because this one, like, I love this movie, but I mainly like watch the ones like I rewatch all the time are mainly Django, Pulp, kind of like, and Kill Bill, like those movies. But yeah, man, it's crazy. Like Tim Roth does a good job of even revealing it. So it turns out, and this is where we kind of get that other cop. I think his name is Nash. So this is where we go into Mr. Orange's story, and he's this undercover cop who has to pose as a guy trying to go into Joe. So we get a little bit of him trying to act like a drug dealer, and how he got hired. So I think he's like the last one of the like going into like what happened. Mr. Brown, which was Tarantino's character you saw earlier, I think he dies early. He dies earlier. So then after that, Eddie. I think there's another scene where this is where we get kind of like a bit more of like how the robbery went and how they got their names. So this is how they all got their names and how the job went, and they kind of show how like Mr. White, not Mr. White, Mr. Orange got shot. He got shot by this girl who was trying to steal her car, and it's crazy, man. Like it's so natural. It's not like you're questioning where you're at. So then now we're kind of back to where we are. Um, the nice guy Eddie, um, nice guy Eddie, Mr. Pink and Mr. White arrive, and now Mr. Orange has to explain why he shot um, Mr. Bond, and he told him what happened, but nice guy Eddie didn't want to believe him because they explained why Mr. Blonde got in prison and never said anything about his dad. So then this is where Joe arrives, and Joe pretty much spoils that Mr. Orange is the cop, but Mr. White doesn't want to believe it. So now then all of them have guns because Joe was about to shoot Mr. Orange, but Mr. White won't let him, and then nice guy Eddie pulls out his gun, and we have like this nice standoff, and then they all shoot each other because, but nice guy Eddie and Joe died, but Mr. White survives, and him and Steve, Mr. Pink runs out with the diamonds, and then I think it's implied he gets shot off screen because I think you hear gunshots when cops arrive. And this is where Mr. Orange reveals to Mr. White that he's a cop. It's kind of a sad scene because Mr. White literally shot and risked his job. Whatever we feel about them as criminals, it's so crazy. Like, he shot his boss, and the reveal finally happens, and he's like holding him, and then he grabs the gun. He's about to shoot him. Then cops come in and shoot him. This movie is so good, and it's crazy. Like, it's about criminals, people you probably shouldn't feel bad for, but it's done so well. The dialogue, the scope, the soundtrack is so good. And the crazy thing is, like I said, not a lot of side characters. It flows perfectly. The transitions into the flashback scenes are done so naturally. It doesn't. And then when you get back to the scenes in the present, it's not like, where the fuck are we? You know where you are. It's done so smoothly, man. And and Tarantino had some of the best dialogue in that opening 7.5 minutes. So it kind of sucks. I kind of wish he was in it more, but I get it. He's the director. He probably was like, I don't want to put myself in it too much, so I'll put myself in this beginning scene, and then the scene where they show how he got shot. So yeah, very just well-made movie, guys. Definitely a 10 out of 10 film. Probably, you're going to see me say this for this film and then Pulp Fiction, the next one. Just, so good. And crazy thing is, like, this is Tarantino's first big one. I know he did. I think he did something before this, but this was like his first big movie, and it came and it's like it was a like a he knocked it out of the park. He made a classic, so that's why he is my fifth favorite director, or fourth or fifth. He's up top five. He's such a great one. So yeah, guys, I'm gonna have fun definitely doing these movies. So, but other than that, guys, tomorrow I'm gonna be doing my Jet Li movie, probably my last one for a bit. I'll definitely go back if I find some more, but for a bit, I'm gonna this we're gonna do this movie. Probably one of it's his probably one of his older ones, super older ones called Shaolin Temple. Came out in 1982. I've never seen it, so I think it's a nice way to kind of end it because it's one of his. It's his, like I think it's his earliest or one of his earliest movies. So it will be definitely fun to kind of end Jet Li on for a bit. I'll definitely go back if I find something else I want to review, but you know, so it's gonna be fun to talk about that. But definitely, I love talking Pulp Fiction. Not Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Sorry, guys. Reservoir Dogs is such a classic. I heavily recommend it. So, but other than that, fuck Warner Brothers. Fuck LaBitch James. Fuck Disney. Fuck Kevin Smith. Fuck Colin Kaepernick. Fuck Seth Rogen. Fuck the Biden administration. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Peace.